Welcome to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast for farmers and ag professionals by the Iowa Farm Bureau, bringing you the news, experts, and educational insights that matter most. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to our June 3rd edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. I'm Andrew Wheeler, and today we're introducing you to Madelynn Wuestenberg, who began her role as Iowa State University Extension's Ag Climatology Specialist back in January. And later in this episode, we'll bring on Iowa Farm Bureau's Farmer Education Program Manager to share an exciting tour of unique ag businesses in western Iowa, which we're offering young farmers this July. First up is Madelynn Wuestenberg, a native of Slater in central Iowa who earned her master's degree in Agricultural Meteorology from Iowa State University last November. Spokesman reporter Bob Bion had a chance to talk with Madelynn late last month.
So how about we start with a little bit of your background, where you were raised and your schooling?
I was raised in Slater, Iowa, just south of Ames. I grew up there most of my life and really just loved being part of a rural community. I worked at the local small town grocery store during high school. I also worked at the Slater Public Library for most of high school. So I really have such a soft heart for small towns and agricultural communities. Then, after high school, I came to Iowa State to study meteorology, and as I was taking my classes and really in deep in the math and physics, I was just so missing that agricultural component of my life. So I decided to add an agronomy minor, and kind of the rest is history. I joined a research lab here on campus as an undergraduate working for Dr. Andy Van Lukey and their group, and it was just so wonderful to be back. I was working in the summers for their group doing field work, taking soil samples, doing hand harvest, calculating leaf area index for our research plots, and just loved being out there in the hands-on aspect of that agricultural work. So then that experience eventually transitioned into staying at Iowa State to work on my master's in agricultural meteorology, and I continued that work with Dr. Van Lukey and stayed with his group through my master's work, and that finished up last fall. And now I'm still here at Iowa State in this position with Iowa State Extension and Outreach.
Did you have some interest in meteorology or climatology and weather as a youngster, or did it really come on at the university level?
Definitely, like a lot of meteorologists, really found that passion for weather and climate as a child. So when I was quite little, my grandparents' farm was hit by a tornado in southern Kansas. And I remember going back to the farm afterwards in the days following to help with cleanup and just going to be with that community that my dad was a part of his whole life, and feeling the weight of that natural disaster and just wondering, like, how can this happen and how do we understand how these storms happen? And that was really where the love for weather started. Then I learned that meteorology does take quite a bit of math and physics to get through, and I was quite good at those subjects in high school, really, really enjoyed them. So it just felt right to continue that passion.
So at this point, what do you enjoy most about climatology and weather, meteorology? Anything in particular you enjoy with research?
Currently, I'm not actively involved in any research here at the university or anywhere for that matter, but I so loved my research as an undergraduate and as a graduate student here at Iowa State. And what I loved most about it was looking for ways to connect the research to individuals and to make it personal for them or meaningful for people to actually pick up the results of that research and make changes because of it.
Well, so big congratulations to you on being named the new Extension Agricultural Climatology Specialist. a new position at Iowa State. What will you be handling in this role? What sort of information will you be providing for Iowans through this extension position?
Yeah, this role is very exciting in that it is dedicated 100% to extension. So Iowa State does have a history of agricultural climatology, and this role was developed really to specifically serve extension and helping support existing programs and integrating climate information into those, but also working to develop new projects and presentations for the future also. So really working to integrate how might we build resiliency to overcome challenges due to climate change, and how do we communicate about those things and build relationships with people so that they can build that resiliency personally.
So kind of putting you on the spot here, just curious, could you give us an example of maybe something that you would work on in the field with a local farmer?
A few things I have coming up yet this summer are field days. So if people are attending different field days across the state hosted by our regional field specialists, I'm often invited into those spaces to talk about either weather and climate summaries from the past growing season, or giving a outlook for what's to come, or what are future climate outlooks showing, and really decoding what some of those things mean and putting that agricultural context onto them. So that is one of the first ways that individuals can interact with me this coming summer. There will be a fencing and grazing clinic in Western Iowa that I will talk about drought conditions and how to prepare more for those in terms of pastures. And then I'll also be at the Armstrong Research and Demonstration Farm for a field day to give an overview of past weather from the last 5 years and kind of the lifetime of the drought we have seen in the last around 4 years, and how we've kind of started to come out of that this spring.
Yeah, so it sounds like this is a very important position for the university, for the state, for our ag community. Why do you feel this position is so important for the Iowa ag community?
As a meteorologist, I know we get so excited and a little nerdy about the data we look at, and there's so much jargon involved with that. And so this position is so important to pull out that agricultural context in meteorology and climatology and decode some of that jargon so that us weather people aren't just talking to ourselves and actually having those conversations with others and helping them become more resilient and understand some of the struggles we may deal with in the future.
Yeah, you'll also be working hand in hand with the USDA Midwest Climate Hub and State Climatologist Office. Would you mind explaining your relationship with those offices?
I do get to work very closely with the Midwest Climate Hub and Justin Glisson, our state climatologist, and that is such a joy to work with both of those groups. Dennis with the Midwest Climate Hubs and Justin both are so fantastic at what they do and are great communicators. So as I'm starting in this position, really learning from them how to be a good communicator and really understand what challenges producers face most. So working and learning from them has been fantastic. I'm certainly not replacing either of them, but instead helping support them and boost the ag climate group across the state, and the resources that we all offer, just really helping to elevate that.
Let's turn to weather a little bit. We've had a wet spring, which we haven't been able to say for the last 4 years. So the drought conditions we've experienced the last 4 years are close to being busted. What has this moisture meant for the ag community, for water resources, and for this upcoming growing season?
I've said a couple different times, it's hard to complain about the rain because we've needed it to refill our water resources and get wells back up to where they need to be, refilling that groundwater, recharging that groundwater. But at the same time, we also have folks who need to get their crops in the ground. So in some areas, that has been a little bit of a struggle with having soils dry enough for planting and having long enough periods between rain for drying out, and then also being able to get in the field. So some areas I'm hearing reports of needing to replant. That is one issue that the wet spring has caused. But again, it's so hard to complain when we continue to see improvements in drought.
Maybe let's look forward a little bit now, forecast-wise, to the summer and the fall. What can we expect? What's the forecast for the growing season and into harvest?
The Climate Prediction Center does put out a product that shows the outlooks out several months. We have an active pattern that has continued this whole spring. It's kind of like a broken record right now with active weather pattern. But then if we look at the longer term outlooks for June, these show equal chances for temperature, high or low, which means that we're not getting a strong signal either way for those temperatures for the month of June, and an elevated chance for precipitation in June. So potentially, again, seeing a somewhat active pattern as we move through June. And then the 3-month temperature outlook does show a warm signal for May, June, and July of this summer, and equal chances for above or below normal precipitation.
Are we still headed out of an El Nino and more towards a La Nina this summer and into fall?
Yes, that is what is expected for this year, is a transition from El Nino to ENSO neutral likely in the next month, then La Nina developing in June to August or July to September, with a 49% chance of La Nina developing June to August and a 69% chance of La Nina developing July to September. So as we move further in the growing season, those chances for La Nina are increasing.
What will that La Nina mean for Iowa weather?
So La Nina and El Nino both have stronger signals in winter compared to summer. So in summer, it's a bit more difficult to pull apart those signals because they're just not quite as strong as they are during the winter. But for La Nina present in the winter in Iowa, we expect a bit colder with a more variable polar jet stream. So that variability allows for those cold pools of air to be pulled down towards the Midwest in winter, and potentially wetter conditions. So as we transition into La Nina, that's what we might expect this coming winter.
So let's maybe end with your overall thoughts and excitement for taking on this new role, this new position.
It's so exciting. Getting to work directly with ISU Extension field specialists and agronomists and beef specialists and the farm management team and small farms sustainability, I really get to work with everyone, which is super awesome because every aspect of ag has some component where they care or are interested about the weather. So it's just so fun to work with all of these different groups and learn about what they do and the tools they use to serve Iowans and how I can integrate into that and provide that weather and climate expertise.
If anybody would like to reach out to you individually, how could they reach you?
They should and can, and I would love to hear from them. They can reach out to me through email, which is mjwes@iastate.edu, or they can visit the website I manage through Iowa State Extension, which is hosted through the Natural Resource Stewardship webpage. So that would be naturalresources.extension.iastate.edu/climate will take you straight to my page. And through this page, I post a weekly climate outlook every Thursday that goes out right in line with the Drought Monitor, which is released on Thursdays, and also is kind of a landing page for various climate and weather tools that other organizations and collaborators are developing and maintaining. So that is a place to go for lots of great information on weather and climate. And please check out the Climate Outlook blog that is a summary of some recent past weather, and then a brief planting progress, and then also a brief summary of the climate outlook for the next week to month or so.
Congrats on your new role, Madelynn. You just heard Madelynn say that we have a strong network of climatology experts in this state, including Dr. Dennis Toddy of USDA's Midwest Climate Hub and state climatologist Dr. Justin Glisson, who have both been featured on this podcast in the past. We look forward to the additional analysis and practical insights Madelynn can bring to the table for farmers, and we wish her the best as she progresses in her new role. Next up, we'll bring on Iowa Farm Bureau's Farmer Education Program Manager, Zach Brummer. It's Zach's job to help facilitate a wide variety of educational opportunities for farmers across the state, including Iowa Farm Bureau's annual Young Farmer Ag Insights Tour. This year's tour, which is for Iowa farmers between the ages of 21 and 40, will explore a handful of unique ag sites in western Iowa and Nebraska over the course of 2 days in July. For more on that, here's Zach Brummer with spokesman reporter Corey Munson.
So we've got the Young Farmer Ag Insights Tour coming up here. I know last year you visited Eastern Iowa during this tour, and now you're heading out west. Can you tell us about the tour? When is it, and what are you going to be seeing?
Yeah, so this year we're going out west, and we've got 4 main stops this year planned for the tour. First, we're going to stop at Lonely Oak Distillery, which is a little micro distillery out in western Iowa, operated by Pat and Amy Hoffman. They started that just a few years ago, really. It was an opportunity for them to take their grain processing to the next step and really further diversify their product on down the line there. So after we stop there, we'll be visiting Elite Octane. Last year, a lot of the feedback that we got was that the ethanol plant tour was a hit. And so I wanted to include that again in this year's tour. And Elite Octane is actually one of, if not the newest ethanol plant that's been built in operation in the United States with state-of-the-art equipment. After Elite Octane, we'll end up going over to Lincoln Premium Poultry. They were established in 2016 for Costco in collaboration with Costco. The complex there includes a state-of-the-art processing facility, hatchery, and feed mill. So if you go to Costco and have ever had one of those rotisserie chickens, this facility was specifically designed to produce those for Costco. And last but not least, we're going to go to Claas North America, which is in downtown Omaha, and they produce the award-winning Lexion combines there. And they have a team of folks, the engineers that build those and assemble those there on site. And so we'll get a behind-the-scenes look at that process at their American headquarters there in Omaha.
Would you say there's any kind of theme running through these stops this year?
Yeah, I think innovation and, vertical integration. And vertical integration maybe pertains more to the Lincoln Premium Poultry piece, but a lot of these stops are focused on new, young, and or innovative companies that have found ways to improve upon either their existing businesses or the practices within an industry to capture additional margin and create additional synergies and efficiencies within the marketplace for themselves and for the farmers and producers that in some instances utilize their services or sell them products. And so that's the focus of this year's tour.
As you look at the list there, what you set up, is there anything you're particularly looking forward to?
I think they're all going to be really interesting stops. The Lonely Oak Distillery, I'm really looking forward to that in terms of, getting on a family-owned farm with some producers that took the next step in the processing, in the supply chain of their commodities that they grow. I'm interested to see that. And then also the other one on kind of the other end of the spectrum in terms of size would be Lincoln Premium Poultry. I think that that's going to be a really unique behind-the-scenes look at, a brand new state-of-the-art poultry processing facility. Again, the vertical integration of the hatchery, the feed mill, and the processing plant. I think it'll just be really neat to see all of those steps in that process.
As I recall, last year participating in this tour, we basically hopped on a bus and moved around to the different locations. Is that how it's going to be set up again this year?
Yeah, so the tour's July 11th through 12th, and we will be hopping on the bus at about 7:30 in the morning on July 11th, so it's an early start. We'll be starting right here at the Iowa Farm Bureau Federation's quarters in West Des Moines, and we'll be heading west from there. And then the plan will be to stay in Old Market, Omaha that evening. We're staying at the Hyatt there in Old Market. It should be a really fun evening for anybody who's attending the tour. Following that, the next morning, we're going to hop back on the bus and finish the tour up with 2 stops on Friday, and then we'll have everybody back to West Des Moines by 4:30, if not 5 o'clock Friday evening.
Remind me who's eligible to participate in this.
We're targeting young farmers ages 21 through 40. Last year was 18 to 35. We wanted to expand that range a little bit. Just because of some of the stops this year, we decided to take the initial age up to 21.
And I know this is the second time you're personally leading this tour. Are there any lessons that you gained last year that you're going to be applying to this year?
Yeah, we have a survey that we send out to attendees after the tour. My biggest takeaway was just making sure that we had plenty of time at each stop. I think last year we had 5 stops scheduled. This year I cut that down to 4 to really emphasize the amount of time we get at each stop.
So what's the value proposition for a participant? What do you hope that the young farmers would get out of this?
Yeah, so the value proposition of the trip this year, I think that we all get pretty busy on the farm. And so one of the first value propositions is just to step away from the farm and get out and get a fun educational opportunity, get some networking with other farmers, and really just step away from the farm. Beyond that, I think this year's tour focuses on some pretty significant companies within the industry that perhaps you don't get a lot of exposure to, especially not a lot of behind the scenes exposure to. Again, just building your knowledge of the industry that you're in, the agricultural industry, and doing it in a fun way where you can collaborate and network with other producers your age. I think that offers a lot of value to folks.
There's a learning component, and I think there's also a social side to this. And you're making relationships or rekindling relationships that you've had in the past with other young farmers.
Yep, for sure.
In your experience, do you find that trips like this lead to greater involvement with Iowa Farm Bureau by the participants?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, I've only been doing it for a year, but I've already had at least one couple from last year's tour rejoin this year's tour, and I've seen some familiar faces at other industry events, such as the Young Farmer Conference, actually. So yeah, I think that it's just another way to stay involved with Iowa Farm Bureau, and again, to increase those networking opportunities. And, Iowa Farm Bureau's proud to support those type of things and opportunities there.
What's the cost, and is there a limit to how many people can participate?
Yeah, we're limited by the bus, unfortunately, so it's going to be about 45 to 50 participants. We're a little over halfway full already. It is filling up, so if you are interested, please do check that out. But the cost is $75 per an individual member. If you are going to come as a couple under your household membership, we're only charging $110, so a little bit of a break if you and your spouse are coming.
And does that fee include the hotel room and meals and stuff like that?
Yep. So that includes the bus, obviously, all the tours and eat costs that we would have on the tours, and then meals as well.
Finally, where can young farmers go to find out more information on this trip?
Yeah, if you just go to iowafarmbureau.com, we've got a big banner there on our homepage where it's being promoted along with our Ag Econ Summit, which is also coming up this summer that you're welcome to check out. But yeah, just click on that banner. It'll take you into the main page where you can see the itinerary, learn more information, and register.
If you're a young farmer, you don't want to miss that Young Farmer Ag Insights Tour. Again, the tour is July 11th and 12th, and space is limited, so we encourage you to get registered soon. To do that, head out to iowafarmbureau.com or click the link down in the notes for this podcast episode. That's all for this edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll join us for the next one on June 17th. Thank you for doing the work that inspires everything we do here at the Iowa Farm Bureau, and thanks for listening to the Spokesman Speaks.
Thank you for listening to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast by Iowa Farm Bureau. Check out more podcast episodes at iowafarmbureau.com/podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Spokesman Speaks podcast in the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and other popular podcast apps. We appreciate your ratings and reviews, and we welcome you to email us your feedback at podcast@ifbf.org.